Find out which cigars suck on this edition of the Dad Smoking Cigars podcast. Hello. Welcome to the Dad Smoking Cigars podcast. With you as always, I am your host, Kyle D. Garrett, and the Dad Smoking Cigars podcast is sponsored by Casa Cuevas Cigars, from our Casa to yours, and Pariah Cigars. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm always happy to be with you on this lovely Friday. Weather's getting warmer, and that means shorts and sandals. I like shorts and sandals, and I don't like shorts and sandals, and I know that doesn't make any sense, but I am partial to the cooler weather. And I often joke or just straight up say that I was born in the wrong state, or just the wrong part of the state, because it is warm pretty much all year round, which doesn't bother me entirely, but the summers here, in my opinion, ever so humble, they suck. I don't like summertime here. Now, I know that summertime is way worse in a lot of other states like Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, Nevada, all that kind of stuff, because those are mostly desert, and the heat is dry, and it is overbearing, and it sucks. But we still hit triple digits here pretty much every year. At the very least, we're in the high 90s. It gets pretty fucking warm, and I've never really been a fan. And I think it really got soured when having been a pool guy for 11 years. That was the job that I held the longest, and it was a great job. I enjoyed it. Great customers. Loved doing that job, and I wish I could have held on to it, but it was too far away, and I couldn't keep making the commute, especially when my oldest started going to school out here instead of out where I was working preschool, and it was easy for me to drop him off, yada yada yada. You don't want to hear that. But I started to kind of hate the summertime after a while, just because that was always my busiest time of the year. I always had a lot of work that needed to be done, just because people never fucking listen to their pool guy, and they always end up doing something or the other that makes their pool turn an absolutely lovely shade of green that I then had to clean up. So working that much harder in the heat, it kind of just soured my disposition towards summer in general. But I think I've kind of softened a little bit in recent years, just because, one, I don't work that job anymore. I tend to work indoors mostly in a nice air-conditioned building. I do have to step outside periodically because I do work in the garden department. But for the most part, I like summer a little bit more than I used to, and I definitely enjoy kicking back by the pool, especially if I have a good cigar and have a drink. So, those times are coming, and I'm looking forward to them. Speaking of good cigars, right now I am smoking the Cavalier Genevieve Regional Exclusive United States Double Corona. This was passed along to me at TPE, and I thought tonight was a good night to smoke it. So far, so very good. It is really tasty, very chocolatey, bready, got a slight bit of sweetness in there. It's lovely, and I'm enjoying it. It's a nice, big, long smoke, and I think this is sadly going to be the only cigar I smoked while I'm recording this, but it's going to be a good one, so I really can't complain. Now, in the opening, I was talking about finding out which cigars suck. Now, at the outset, I am not going to be naming any specific brand, just because I don't think that's playing very nice. I don't think that's actually very kind. I don't think it's appropriate. It's actually bad etiquette. First of all, if I were bashing any specific brand, I would be awfully presumptuous to do so, because then I would be presuming, or assuming, whichever word you want to use, that your tastes are similar to mine, which odds are they're not. I mean, they might be, but I don't know that. It also kind of makes me come off as a snob, just because, again, it's presumptuous for me to think that my taste in cigars would be your taste in cigars. Now, obviously, I share a lot of similar tastes to a lot of people that I know in the cigar community. We like a lot of the same things. But then again, there are cigars that they really enjoy that, one, I don't get to enjoy that much because they might be a little bit more on the expensive side. And two, I've tried them and I'm not as crazy about them as they are. But am I going to bash that brand or bash them for liking that brand? No, of course not, because that's what they like. You have every right to like what you like in all things, but definitely cigars. I've also interacted with people who acted this way, or they basically tried a certain cigar, and because they didn't like it, they kind of just like, as opposed to just saying, I didn't dig it, I probably won't smoke it again, which is perfectly fine to say, they decided to go a whole different route. And by that, I mean they started acting like a snobbish dick. I'm going to cite one specific incident in particular. I'm not going to mention names. I am going to mention the brand, though, because the brand just happens to be one of my sponsors. And I'm talking about Casa Cuevas. About 4 years ago, there was another cigar personality influencer, which honestly we haven't seen hide nor hair of in a long time. And this was kind of the catalyst for that. Again, I won't mention his name because honestly I think I forgot his name. I forgot his Instagram handle for sure, because after this he changed it a couple times. He came back and he had a big following. So this kind of did him in, unfortunately, because he got a lot of backlash for it. The cigar in particular that this guy tried and didn't dig all that much was the Casa Cuevas Core Line Connecticut. Now, not everybody's going to dig the Core Line Connecticut by Casa Cuevas. I know it's one of my favorites. It's in my top 3, but not everybody's gonna like it, and that's fine. What's not fine is what this guy did, because as the comments started rolling, basically this guy decided to take it up a notch or take it down a notch, depending how you look at it. He wasn't being classy by any stretch of the imagination. That's pretty much where this is going. And it got to a point where the guy basically said that, and this is not a direct quote, but it's more or less what he said. He basically decided that the Casa Cuevas Core Line Connecticut, I'm getting it twisted up, but he basically said that the cigar wasn't even worthy to be thrown into his charcoal grill to light it up. Now, come on. I mean, come on. If you don't like it, you don't like it, and you can express that you didn't like it, that you're not going to smoke it again, but saying shit like that makes you look like an asshole, as if you're the authority on what cigars are good and what cigars aren't good. You don't like it, you don't like it. That's your prerogative. But there are tons of other people who do like the cigar. Obviously, I'm one of them. You could say that I'm biased, and fine, I guess so. But even before Casa Cuevas was the sponsor for the channel, I still loved the Casa Cuevas Core Line and every other subsequent cigar they made, and that continues on. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Casa Cuevas, though unlikely, made a cigar that I wasn't crazy about, or that some people weren't crazy about. I mean, it happens. In all cigar manufacturers, they can't always hit it completely out of the park. Making cigars is a science, and it's an art form. And sometimes you might create something that you might think is good, but then people try it and they're not crazy about it, and then you're like, okay, back to the drawing board. Let's try a new blend. Let's make something new, something different, something better. You know, it's a process, and sometimes you might encounter a miss as opposed to a hit. I would give my honest assessment of the cigar because, I mean, that's what I always do. But even if, and again, I seriously doubt that Casa Cuevas would ever do this, much less most of the cigar manufacturers that I really like, that I have collaborated with, partnered with, that have sent me their product that I have tried and reviewed. I seriously doubt that this would ever happen. But even if they made a really terrible cigar, all I would say is that, you know, I didn't like this as much as the other Casa Cuevas cigars. I would not ever bash even a single cigar, even if I thought it was terrible, because that's just not cool. Now, is that to say that there aren't cigars that absolutely suck? No. There are cigars that absolutely suck. And there always have been, there always will be. There will always be that one cigar, maybe from a particular brand, or no particular brand, maybe one random one from a different manufacturer, who the hell knows. But there's gonna be cigars at some point, just because it's statistically impossible to always make a great cigar 100% of the time among all manufacturers. There are cigars out there that suck. I'm going to give you some of what I feel like is, at least from my perspective, criteria for a really bad cigar. And, this is stuff that may be, elementary and obvious, and then other things might not be as obvious. So we're just going to navigate these together, and I'm going to give you, in my opinion, the makeup of a really crappy cigar. Obviously, there are very popular brands that have been around for literally, close to or even over a century. Some might call them heritage brands, but then there's also brands that have just been around for a really long time. They have become popular, and they tend to crank out a lot of cigars, simply due to supply and demand. Because the brands are so popular, a lot of people want to keep smoking them, and so they keep buying the product, and that means that the factories of these manufacturers have to work incredibly hard and incredibly fast to pump out cigars for their customers. Otherwise, they're not going to turn a profit. When that happens, unfortunately, quality can suffer, and it can suffer pretty horribly. Cigars aren't able to rest long enough, they aren't draw tested, they aren't given any real, not the kind of attention that they deserve. They don't get to rest for long enough before they're actually put out to market. And so the cigars that you might enjoy smoking on the regular, from a really popular brand or even a heritage brand, if you've noticed that the quality's dipped in recent years, it may have to do with overproduction. There are products you can crank out relatively fast and the quality doesn't suffer too much, but that usually doesn't apply to premium cigars. You get what you pay for most of the time, but there also are those brands that, well, even though they are charging probably ridiculous amounts for cigars, it also depends on which state you live in, tobacco tax and things like that. It's a regulated product, so prices tend to be fairly high. And if you are enjoying a brand that tends to charge quite a bit, you're noticing that the quality's suffering. In that case, you're not exactly getting what you pay for. In addition to overproduction, there are also cigar brands that have this tendency, for whatever reason, to just make one line of cigars after the other. They'll come out with a anniversary edition, then they'll come out with this other special edition or this particular type of cigar. It's hard to keep up. There are brands that have crazy, ridiculous amounts of cigar lines within their own brand. And honestly, depending on whether or not they are really good or really popular, I feel like it's excessive and unnecessary, because I enjoy cigar brands that only maybe have a handful of cigar lines. Different cigars, different blends, different names for the cigars. I can appreciate that more, and I can also get to those cigars more easily in terms of, trying them, smoking them, and being able to enjoy them, as opposed to okay, check that one off the list, and now there's another 100 cigars that I need to try from this brand. It's not something you absolutely have to do, but you want to try different cigars. You want to try cigars you've never had. You want to have the chance to enjoy a cigar you've heard, a lot about from people who continue to smoke it, or you see that they are increasingly popular, whether you go to trade shows, you read magazines, or you just see online that a lot of people are smoking that particular cigar. If it's really popular, there's a chance that it's being pumped out too fast, too soon, and, well, it's not as good as it should be. Honestly, less is more, and keeping it simple never hurt anybody. And then there's overblending. Now, I said before, creating cigars and coming up with blends, it's an art form, it's a science. One that I honestly know very little about except what I like in a cigar. After trying so many cigars, I know what blends work. I know what blends taste good together. I know what blends provide an incredible flavor. But sometimes, depending on the manufacturer, they try to cram a lot of different tobaccos into one cigar. Now, depending on the tobacco, that can work. If you've got 3 or 4 different tobaccos, making up the wrapper, the binder, and the filler, you could feasibly fit anywhere from 3 to 5 different tobaccos in there, depending, obviously, on the makeup and the quantity and all that kind of stuff. I don't know exactly how it works, but you can feasibly put quite a few tobaccos into one cigar. The question is, does it work? Does it work? It might. Some cigars can pull it off, but I feel like very rarely can you do that and have a really balanced cigar. That's the thing. Balance is key. Because if you're just like throwing shit in and you're not really thinking about the balance of it, you're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to throw a bunch of different tobaccos in here, blend it all up. It's going to be awesome. Maybe. Or it might be terrible, depending on which tobaccos you use and how much. Again, less is more, and keeping it simple never hurt anybody. Go too far to the other extreme and you can have a really boring cigar, really tasteless and dull cigar. I've talked about Cuban cigars before. Now, Cuba, it's legendary for its cigars, and there is a uniqueness to the tobacco there. If you smoke Cuban cigars enough times, and you know that there's a distinct flavor to Cuban cigars, and you know if you've gotten a good Cuban cigar. I have smoked really good Cuban cigars of all different brands, the heritage brands. I'm going to mention some brands just for the sake of recognition of what Cuban cigars are produced. Cohiba, Montecristo, Romeo Julieta, Partagas, and things like that. I've smoked all of those brands, ones that were actually from Cuba, genuine Cuban cigars, and you know when you're smoking a Cuban cigar. But at the same time, if you're smoking a Cuban cigar that was hastily made, it was put out too soon, stuff like that, even though Cuban tobacco is very unique, you might get a crappy cigar in your bunch that you bought through that website that gets Cubans through Europe, and that's the only way you get your Cubans to the United States. It may genuinely be Cuban tobacco. Then again, it's hard to tell these days, but you really know when you've got a genuine Cuban. But even Cuban cigars can be made boring because of just how they're made, as opposed to just the singular Cuban tobacco that's in it. Whereas if you got, more domestic cigars, and it has like maybe, one or two tobaccos in there that weren't very well blended or they weren't very well aged, it can become really bland and tasteless. I've smoked some bland and tasteless cigars, and, it goes without saying, they weren't fun. It's just, they weren't fun to smoke, and I was looking forward to the cigar being done. But the next thing that can make cigars suck, which I know sounds funny, but go with me for a second here. Another thing that can make cigars suck, it has nothing to do necessarily with what's in the cigar or who makes the cigar, or even if it's like the 100th line of that brand. One thing that can actually cause a cigar to fall completely flat is overhype. There have been numerous times where a certain cigar was just getting it was just all the rage, and people were raving about it. Oh, it's such a good cigar, it's such a good brand, I love these guys, I love this cigar. You know what? Obviously there's nothing wrong with that. You like what you like, but I hear about it, and then I try it, and it's nothing like what everyone has been saying. Again, it's not the fault of the manufacturer. It's not the fault of the blender who created the cigar. No doubt there was so much hard work that was put into the making of the cigar, the marketing of all of it. Everything was done very well, but just for whatever reason, due to overhype and all that kind of stuff, you have this expectation built up in your mind, and people are just going on and on about it, and then you try it, and you're just like, this is nothing special. This is just, it's okay at best. It's bland at worst. I don't really like it, and I don't think I'll ever smoke this again. Again, it's not the fault of the people who made the cigar. Just, it got blown out of proportion, and people made it seem to be this fantastic cigar, and for you, it falls flat. At the end of the day, though, you like what you like. If you like certain brands that are really popular, and even if the quality has suffered for a while, it's just your brand, it's what you really like. I know people who only smoke one brand. I'll never understand that. But they like what they like. That's what they enjoy, so that's what they smoke. And you know what? More power to them, I guess. They're missing out on a lot of really great cigars. But again, you like what you like, and sometimes even the brands that I personally dislike or even hate, there's really no brand that I hate, but you get what I'm saying. There are people who love it. I don't get it, but they like it, so fuck it. That's what they like. I like what I like, they like what they like. We can still sit down and smoke cigars together, no judgment. I'm not going to give you shit for it. I mean, unless you give me shit for what I like, then I'll be petty. I'll give you complete and total shit and go into why exactly the cigars you like are just terrible. I'm kind of only a little serious when I say that. So keep that in mind next time you try a cigar and you think it absolutely sucks. Maybe you think it's dog shit and you have the urge to proclaim it from the rooftops. Think twice, because there may be other people who like it, other people who enjoy it, and it may not suck to them. Let them enjoy that cigar. Let people enjoy things. You enjoy what you enjoy, and they will enjoy what they enjoy, and everyone will be absolutely content with that. And that's how it should be when it comes to cigar enjoyment. You enjoy what you enjoy, and let other people enjoy what they enjoy. It's all subjective, and no one person dislikes a certain cigar the same as another. So it is what it is between every individual. Not all cigars are made equal. Not all cigars are made the same. Not all cigars are going to hit a home run every single time. The takeaway is just don't give people shit for what they like, and they won't give you shit for what you like. And if they do give you shit for what you like, then just shrug your shoulders and be like, okay, and walk away. Very rarely do cigars really truly suck, but for you, for me, they might. I think that's a good place to put a pin in it. I really appreciate you guys joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that there is something you took away from it. And if you enjoyed it, then please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you think somebody might get something from this, then share the video with them. That's it for me, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. I appreciate it immensely. I hope you guys are doing fantastic, staying healthy and safe, and of course keeping it smoky. And as always, I will catch you in the next one.